So this is going to be a weird one, because guess what? There are 15 NHL games on tap, which means that 30 out of the 32 teams in the league are in action today. The only ones that aren't playing are Edmonton, whom we're going to be talking about in this video, and actually the Utah Hockey Club. So those two are the only two teams that get a break and have the ability to watch every other team in the league take action in this Wednesday afternoon. It's very apparent that the NHL does not want to compete with the NFL's Thanksgiving programming, and as a result, they're stockpiling everything on Wednesday and Friday. It's great for fantasy hockey owners because we have very difficult tasks in choosing whom it is we start and not start. But anyways, today what we're doing is talking about the newest when it comes to the New York Rangers. Now, this actually did come out a few days ago. We didn't talk about it then, but this was the tweet that started it all. It's from Elliotte Friedman, who went out there and spoke out about some of the veterans on this Rangers team. Take a look at this. This was from November 25. He went out there and said this: "In the aftermath of their 6-2 loss in Edmonton on Saturday, the Rangers have made it very clear they are interested in making moves and shaking up their roster. Among the names indicated are Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, although other options will be considered." And realistically, we didn't have enough time to talk about this. There were a bunch of other topics that I wanted to dive into beforehand, but that, of course, was a pretty interesting piece of information, considering the fact that the Rangers are not actually doing all too poorly in the NHL standings. They are in the 4th overall spot in the Metro, and if you go over to the Eastern Conference, they are 5th overall in the conference itself. So that's not necessarily a team that screams, oh, we should be trading our top goal scorer. Chris Kreider has 9 goals on the year and 0 assists, which is very interesting, and our captain. It's very unorthodox, you could say. But when you think about the Rangers, how this core has gone so far every few years, how they always seem to find ways to disappoint, how this season they are not necessarily stringing together the most confident wins out there, and how there could be some sort of a panic for those who are looking at this team and saying, hey, Chris Kreider has 9 points on the season. He is, 9th overall on the team in points. Jacob Trouba is down there doing what he's doing, still being the menace that he is. So, if you wanted to talk about freeing up some money, changing things up, getting this core going in a different way, inspiring hope through a trade, and inspiring change, the Rangers might be in a spot to do that. This is where we dive into an article from BVMSports.com. Take a look at this. This was published by Andrew Florio earlier this morning. The Rangers are considering a Trouba trade. Here are our top 5 landing spots. Elliotte Friedman's bombshell report of the Rangers being open to moving Kreider and Trouba has been the talk of the NHL this week. Kreider is the team's longest tenured player, and Trouba serves as the captain. The 30-year-old blue liner has been with the Rangers since 2019 and won the Mark Messier Leadership Award last season. He has been a polarizing figure for fans, but he should have plenty of teams calling. These 5 organizations can use him the most. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to dive into BVM Sports' article itself. Give them their ad views, give Andrew Florio, the writer here, some love. But I wanted to talk about 2 of the 5 teams that are listed in this article. Of course, it's out of 5, so you could go out there and read it yourself if you want to see scoops about the other 3. But I wanted to talk about the 2 orange teams here. Firstly, you have yourselves the Philadelphia Flyers. Some may immediately write off the Flyers because of the rivalry, but Trouba could make sense for Philadelphia. The Flyers have been rumored to be looking for a trade partner for Morgan Frost, who could be an intriguing option for the Rangers to gamble on. The Flyers desperately need leadership, and Trouba is more than capable of providing that. Frost, another contract for salary purposes and draft picks for Trouba, would be beneficial for both sides. Now, that's some pretty vanilla analyses, to be honest, but if you go over to the Philadelphia Flyers and you take a look at their situation, their decor, and what it is they're trying to build with John Tortorella, I think the biggest story out of Philadelphia this year has been the Matvei Michkov thing, but other than that, I mean, defense has also been somewhat of an issue with the absence of Jamie Drysdale. That guy's been out for a while now, not to mention, of course, Ryan Ellis, whom I think I don't want to say people have forgotten about him, but he is still somebody that exists. Right now, if you go over to the Rangers and, not the Rangers, excuse me, the Flyers and their decor, they do have some young dudes suiting up in some pretty notable roles. In particular, Cam York, Emil Andre, and Helge Grans. Grans is a player that I think has developed pretty well ever since being drafted by the LA Kings a few years ago, but Trouba is certainly better than him. Rasmus Ristolainen has proven in limited minutes he can be effective, so if you wanted to say, trade Trouba over to Philadelphia, leave Sanheim at the top of the lineup there, and have Emil Andre and Trouba as some sort of a second pairing, I actually do think that's pretty interesting. If you wanted to force a guy like Nick Seeler, for example, whom you just gave an extension to, give Nick Seeler a top 4 role and play Trouba alongside of him, that pairing is going to have no pucks going behind them at all. Trouba can be a shot-blocking monster and a physical beast, and Seeler is one of the kings in the NHL of shot blocks. Of course, the idea of sending away Morgan Frost is also interesting, but I do think that for Trouba's sake, heading over to a team like Philadelphia would not be the worst situation in the world. He does have trade protection, so he does have a limited amount of teams that he's able to be traded to. I think that a team in the Metro Division just a little bit away on the megabus would be appropriate here. Not to say that Jacob Trouba is going to be taking the megabus on some sort of a transport solo trip, but still, it's close by. That's the point here. However, when it comes to the other team that I wanted to talk about in this video that's listed in this article, I don't necessarily know if Trouba himself would be interested in going to the Edmonton Oilers, who are listed here as the 3rd overall team. The Oilers are a good team when it comes to skill, but they don't have the physically imposing threat that is ideal in hockey. Really? I mean, Darnell Nurse is kind of in there. Trouba would make opposing players think twice when messing up with Connor McDavid or Draisaitl. He would be a good fit as a leader in a thin defensive group. And that is an assessment that I will actually agree with here. We have been talking about the Oilers all season long, ever since the departures of Cody Ceci and Philip Broberg. These 4 guys, Nurse, Ekholm, Bouchard, and Kulak, need some support because the other 2 are just kind of rotating around. There's no real consistency there. The pairings are always getting jumbled up. If you wanted to talk about Trouba heading over to the Edmonton Oilers, he would be such an interesting presence alongside of Darnell Nurse. You don't necessarily need to give these guys sheltered minutes. I think Jacob Trouba is a little bit worse for wear the longer he plays per game, but Darnell Nurse is one of these guys that, oddly enough, I feel like he gets better the more that he plays. Very strange dynamic with him and his overall ability, but I do think that having Nurse and Trouba on the same pairing would kind of cancel each other out and provide some pretty good value for what the Oilers are trying to do in front of their goaltending, which hasn't been great this season. It's definitely been a contributing factor as to where this team has gone the past few months here, but still, Jacob Trouba in Edmonton alongside of Darnell Nurse would be one of the scariest D pairings in the league. Not necessarily scary in terms of strictly their defensive play, but also scary in terms of how they impose their will on the ice. Teams will probably think twice to go up against a Darnell Nurse and Jacob Trouba standing behind him. And ultimately, I think if the Oilers were to capitalize on some of the prospects that they do have, they did acquire some guys after all, like Matthew Savoy or Sam O'Reilly or even Roby Arventi. There are some guys here that are interesting. But whether or not the New York Rangers would be interested in them is another question. They probably do want some guys to help out their team right now. The Oilers have some young dudes that do exist in their organization right now that are actually NHL players. I think Vasily Podkolzin is the biggest one, but whether or not he's an interesting asset to be tossed out there in a trade, I don't really know if that's actually possible, to be honest. He was playing with McDavid and Draisaitl for a moment after all. And of course, we had spoken about this earlier, but Trouba does have protection. He wasn't able to go to Detroit because he did not want to get traded to Detroit. And now for the Edmonton Oilers, I mean, if he doesn't want to go to Detroit, would he want to go to Edmonton? For sure, there's a part of him that's thinking about his family situation and his wife and her career, which is part of why he decided to stay in New York in the first place. But if there's no go to head over to the Mo City, then is there going to be any incentive to go over to Edmonton? I'm probably leaning no. There's probably a bigger incentive to head over to the Flyers. They're just a little bit away there, but ultimately it's up to Trouba where he goes and what it is that he chooses for his life, and ultimately for the Rangers, they just have to acquiesce to that. That's one of the unfortunate truths of having significant trade protection here. If you're a Rangers fan, though, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of trading Trouba away to either Philly or Edmonton? I like it because they're two orange teams and we can talk about them in the same video, but if you're a fan of either of these teams, what would you give up to get Jacob Trouba onto your squad? Do you even want the guy? Or would you just say no? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. 9 and bye.